This is Northern Light for Wednesday, July 15th. Good morning. I'm Catherine Wheeler. A Mohawk filmmaker is documenting the people in her community who are keeping Indigenous cultural traditions alive after centuries of land lost and forced assimilation disrupted that connection.
A lot of our traditional knowledge that had gone to sleep is coming back to us again.
Also on the show, we visit the Sargent Ponds Wilderness for beautiful views of Raquette Lake.
There's hemlocks and white cedars hanging out over the edge of the lake. It's this rocky edge of the lake. No one else out on the water.
And a painting by artist Harold Weston from nearly a century ago is being auctioned off to benefit the Keene Valley Library. We have a conversation with Weston's granddaughter and biographer about his legacy. All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us. Northern Light is supported by Pearsall Wealth Management of Raymond James, Glens Falls, offering financial planning and investing advice to clients for over 40 years. Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. And by Point Positive, offering entrepreneurs the support they need to accelerate their ventures through mentoring, education, and startup funding. PointPositive80k.com. This is Northern Light. I'm Catherine Wheeler. Governor Kathy Hochul has signed an executive order calling for a pause on large data center developments for up to 1 year. Hochul says that will allow the state to come up with stronger regulations to protect consumers and the environment. She says the state still welcomes investment and innovation in AI and other technologies.
And I also believe this, that the businesses that build technology capable of changing civilization with AI are also capable of working with us to protect our power grid, to protect our water supplies and our communities.
Last month, the New York State Legislature passed a bill, a one-year data center moratorium. Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie says talks will continue with Hochul over that bill despite the governor's executive order. He says he was given a heads up about Hochul's plans.
We are still going to negotiate the bill that we passed, and I'm hoping that the governor will sign the bill. So this executive order does not mean that we won't still look to try to get the bill worked out.
There are some differences between the governor's executive order and the bill, including the type of data center projects that would be included in a moratorium. Both supporters and opponents have concerns about the first-in-the-nation data center moratorium. The New York Public News Network's Chris Bolt reports.
Chief among the environmental concerns around hyperscale data centers is the huge amount of power they need.
So energy has to come from solar, right?
The New York Public Interest Research Group's Eric Wood says with the way the state generates energy right now, that would mean burning more fossil fuels.
A lot of these data centers, Bitcoin mining operations, we're talking about methane emissions, more consumption.
Wood, NYPIRG's environmental program coordinator, says there are also air quality and noise concerns. Plus, they often use large amounts of water for cooling the data processing equipment. Hochul's moratorium would pause approvals for 1 year for any plant requiring 50 megawatts of power from the electric grid. Proponents of building data centers say the moratorium would cause the state to miss out on economic gains. The Plumbers and Pipefitters Union called it short-sighted, killing good-paying jobs. But Wood argues it's a necessary pause to avoid agreements that can exploit communities that don't have the resources to properly assess the impacts.
I think that sends a huge signal to the industry that is seemingly invading all of New York's communities, like in Manlius, Lysander, passing ordinances that are preventing these tech giants from consuming all the natural resources.
He adds the year-long break can be used to fully study environmental and economic realities before agreeing to the sometimes landscape-changing plans. There are currently more than 36 hyperscale data center projects proposed, all asking to tap into the electric grid. New York is the first state in the nation to enact a statewide moratorium. For the New York Public News Network, I'm Chris Bolt in Syracuse.
For many Indigenous communities, cultural traditions, food, art, and language are passed down through generations. But centuries of land displacement and forced assimilation have made preserving those traditions challenging. Some younger generations of Indigenous people are working to reconnect with traditions passed down from their ancestors before they're lost entirely. That includes people on the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation in Akwesasne, where one local filmmaker has been documenting their work.
My name is Gajijuni Fox. I'm from Akwesasne, Mohawk Nation territory, and I'm a documentary filmmaker.
This evening, Fox is screening two of her documentaries titled Original Seeds and We Pick It Up Again at the North Country School in Lake Placid. She'll be joined by NCPR reporter David Escobar for a panel discussion about the films following the screening. The two of them met to talk about Fox's documentaries, starting with Original Seeds.
There's a lot of parallels that I noticed between Indigenous people and Indigenous seeds. So we've gone through a lot of the same things in our journeys, and we have this really reciprocal relationship with each other. So the seeds take care of us and we take care of them.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of the history and people that you focus on in this film?
So one of the things that I highlighted in the film was the Sullivan campaign. General Washington had tried to annihilate us by food warfare. And so in the fall had gone around on a campaign and destroyed all of our crops, all of our fruit trees, and right before the winter to try to starve us out. And that's something that people don't learn about. But my main focus is on the Indigenous women and the work that they're doing. Food and seed sovereignty is, something that's so important, especially today. One of the things I was really amazed by in the film as I was making it was when I was with Angie Ferguson in Onondaga. I went into a room of seeds. There was shelves and shelves of seeds, and she has over 4,000 varieties of Indigenous corn, which is crazy when you think about it. When you think about when you go into a grocery store and just the small amount of not just corn, but just vegetables, you always see the same ones, right? Like there's only a few varieties of tomatoes. There's just a few varieties of beans. And standing in that room and feeling the energy of all those different corn seeds that have come across for centuries to be there in that space where they were was something I'll never forget.
Why are seeds and having seed sovereignty, this topic that you talk about in the film, so important for Indigenous communities like Akwesasne?
For us, in our creation story, it talks about when Sky Woman came here from the sky world down to this world, she was carrying seeds with her. So there are some seeds that we call celestial seeds. So she brought corn, beans, squash, potatoes, tobacco. And those seeds have been passed down from our grandmothers to the next generation to the next generation. That's how those seeds have come to be where they are today. And we're so lucky that we still have, so many varieties of our seeds. We don't really think about so much what's in our food or where it's coming from. And it's so important to have those relationships with our original seeds and to, connect to the earth and to plant those seeds and to care for them, just like you care for your own children.
I want to pivot now to the second film, which translates to We Pick It Up Again. You talk about some of the cultural knowledge and traditions that are being reintroduced into Haudenosaunee communities. What interested you about documenting that work?
In my community and many other Haudenosaunee communities, what I've been seeing is that a lot of our traditional knowledge that had gone to sleep is coming back to us again. So things like our rites of passage ceremony for our young people, like weaving mats from bulrush that grows in the river, People are once again making clay pottery, and we hadn't done that for hundreds of years. Quill work, like all these things that our grandmothers did for our everyday use was just breathtaking.
What are some of the reasons that cultural knowledge and those traditions weren't passed down in the first place?
There's a lot of things that went to sleep because our people were really in survival mode for hundreds of years, getting pushed out of our territories and having to adapt to different land. And, all the genocidal practices that were going on, boarding schools and all those kind of things kind of took us away from some of the things that we used to do on the land. And we're still feeling the intergenerational trauma of that. Like in my own family, my mom's mom, my grandmother, stopped speaking the language to her children because of boarding schools, because when our people were in boarding schools, they would be punished for speaking their language. So, it had huge effects, and that's just with the language. And then you think about all the things that are in our material culture that had gone to sleep.
Through the process of making this film, I'm wondering what you think it'll take for these traditions to be relearned and for this cultural knowledge to be passed down for generations to come.
For years in our community, I taught at a local high school here for 20 years. And I taught a class on traditional Haudenosaunee arts. And the young people loved that class. And I think the reason they loved it is because I think we all have that, that genetic memory of doing some of those things, like that's in our blood. When they're handling that clay and they're making pots, they just get so quiet and still. And I think, we have to just keep doing those kind of things and teaching the young people and feeling out for what is their thing, like what is their gift.
That was filmmaker Gajajuni Fox speaking with NCPR's David Escobar. Fox will present her films Original Seeds and We Pick It Up Again at North Country School in Lake Placid tonight at 7 o'clock, with a discussion moderated by our own David Escobar immediately afterward. For more information, including the link for tickets, you can visit ncpr.org. You're listening to North Country Public Radio. You're listening to Northern Light only here on North Country Public Radio. Good morning. It's 8:14. I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around. We'll have a conversation about the legacy of artist Harold Weston and about his ties to the Adirondacks as one of his paintings is being auctioned off to benefit a local library. That's coming up in just a few minutes here on Northern Light. But first, music from December Wind out of Akwesasne. Northern Light is supported by the Northern New York Community Foundation, servicing Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence County since 1929, helping donors fulfill their charitable giving goals to forever strengthen the places they love. Online at nnycf.org. And Mountain Orthotic and Prosthetic Services, a full-service practice providing care for patients of all ages, with offices in Lake Placid, Plattsburgh, Malone, and Burlington. Online at mountainonp.com. And NCPR is a media sponsor for Wilder Weekend, July 24th through 26th at the Wilder Homestead in Malone. This weekend features a cast reunion of the Little House on the Prairie television series, live music, food, and craft vendors, and more. For a link to tickets and the full event schedule, visit ncpr.org/calendar. Three people died in a plane crash in Franklin County on Monday after a small aircraft was reported missing. It's the third plane crash in the Adirondacks this week. Richard Haller reports.
On Monday night, state police say they were notified of an aircraft that crashed shortly after takeoff from the Adirondack Regional Airport. It was about 100 feet in the air, and communication with the plane was lost. State police say a search crew found the plane, a 1976 Piper Aerostar, destroyed in a remote wooded area near Harristown around Route 186, not far from the airport. The Federal Aviation Administration says that the accident was fatal. The pilot and 2 passengers died. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the cause of the crash. Authorities are also still investigating a plane crash that happened Sunday evening in Hamilton County near Pasiku Airport. The pilot, 74-year-old Kenneth Andrio from Mount Pleasant, was killed in the crash. Last Thursday, a seaplane overturned on Lake George in Warren County. The couple on board survived and were not injured. Richard Haller, North Country Public Radio.
Watertown's police chief will retire this month after 33 years with the city. Charles Donahue began his tenure with the Watertown Police Department as a patrol officer in 1993. He rose through the ranks as a detective, sergeant, and lieutenant. He was appointed chief in 2014. Donahue's last day will be July 31st. WWNY-TV reports the city manager will determine his replacement. Forest rangers are working to extinguish a fire on Sawteeth Mountain in the Adirondack High Peaks. The DEC says the Raybrook Dispatch received a report of a fire on Monday afternoon. Crew responded to the fire at Marble Point Lookout. The fire is measuring about 1/10 of an acre. Rangers are working to put out the blaze. According to the DEC, the Adirondacks are at a moderate risk for fires. And a fire damaged the interior of Evans and White Ace Hardware in Potsdam Monday morning. Video shows a heavy blaze and smoke billowing out of the building on Fall Island along Maple Street. Firefighters from across St. Lawrence County, assisted by law enforcement, fought the fire for nearly 10 hours from 6 a.m. in the morning to the late afternoon. No one was in the building at the time of the fire, and no one was injured. Evans and White has been operating for over a century in Potsdam from when it first opened in 1920. In a social media post, the owner said the store will remain closed as they assess the damage. Officials say the cause of the fire is under investigation. 2 state troopers were injured in a crash in the town of Plattsburgh Tuesday. According to New York State Police, 2 patrol cars were approaching the intersection of State Route 374 and Rand Hill Road when a vehicle ahead slowed to make a turn. As both patrol cars slowed, another vehicle failed to notice the slowing traffic. The driver, 41-year-old Michelle Dona of Saranac, struck one of the patrol cars from behind, pushing it into the other patrol car. Following the crash, the front patrol car caught fire. Local fire departments responded and extinguished the flames. Both troopers sustained non-life-threatening injuries. The incident is under investigation. If you drive around the Adirondacks, you're bound to pass a trailhead or two, from miles-long hikes that climb thousands of feet up in the mountains to shorter walks in the woods. The park is full of places to explore. Our Adirondack reporter Emily Russell was driving along a remote road in the Sargent Ponds Wilderness without a destination in mind when she saw a sign for a trailhead. She pulled over, walked about a mile, and found beautiful views of Raquette Lake. She sent back this audio postcard.
I'm sitting here on the edge of Raquette Lake on the northern edge at Outlet Bay. I walked down a snowmobile trail to get here. And there's a couple of lean-tos along this part of the lake. The one that I'm hanging out at is called Hot Rock Lean-To. And it was cool because walking down the snowmobile trail, you could see the forest change as we got closer to the lake. There's hemlocks and white cedars hanging out over the edge of the lake. It's this rocky edge of the lake. And no one else out on the water out here. Very, very peaceful. You can probably hear the wind in the background. It's a bit of an overcast day, so the water itself looks grayish blue. But just a really peaceful, beautiful slice of the Adirondacks that I've never been to before. And just brought the dogs out here. One of them climbed down and waded into the water a bit. A little too early in the season to go for a swim, but still just a great little spot to explore. Emily Russell on the northern end of Raquette Lake at Outlet Bay for North Country Public Radio.
This is NCPR. You're listening to Northern Light only here on North Country Public Radio. Good morning. It's 8:21. I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around. We'll have an interview about Harold Weston and his legacy in the Adirondacks. And after that, Bird Note is coming up at 8:42. First, we're going to take a look at the weather real quick. Patchy haze and smoke throughout the day. Those skies hot as well, highs in the mid-80s, and there's a chance of thunderstorms across the Adirondacks this afternoon. The air quality right now is moderate across the North Country, and if you're unusually sensitive to particle pollution, you might consider reducing your activity level or shortening the amount of time you're active outdoors today as that smoke moves through. That smoke will stick around tonight, though, with lows in the upper 50s and mid-60s. And tomorrow should be sunny, highs in the upper 70s and mid-80s. And there are possible showers and thunderstorms in Lewis County and the St. Lawrence Valley tomorrow. This morning, Jefferson County is under a beach hazard with strong and dangerous currents along Lake Ontario, so beachgoers be wary. Tonight, sunset in Potsdam is at 8:43, and the moon, if you have a chance to look up, is a waxing crescent at 2% of full. At last check, it was 70 in Potsdam, 75 in Clayton, 73 in Watertown, 67 in Saranac Lake, 68 in Elizabethtown, 72 in Indian Lake and Ticonderoga, and 69 in Dannemora. The Adirondacks have captured the attention of artists for centuries, from Georgia O'Keeffe to Winslow Homer. Another artist who focused much of his work on the Adirondacks was Harold Weston. The modernist painter used bold lines and bright colors to capture the high peaks on canvas. One of Weston's paintings is being auctioned off to benefit the Keene Valley Library. The online auction ends next Tuesday, July 21st. Emily Russell spoke with Weston's granddaughter and biographer, Rebecca Foster, about his ties to the Adirondacks and his legacy in the arts.
Harold Weston came up with his family in the 19th century. He was coming up to the Adirondacks since he was a baby. He was born in 1894, and that was just summers, and he did a lot of hiking. He loved everything active, hiking, canoeing, and they walked everywhere because there weren't cars like there are now. So you would walk all the way to Keene Valley, which was 3 miles from where they were. So it was not unheard of to walk tens of miles a day, and was very connected to the trails and to the mountains through that process. I mean, he was steeped in the woods and the mountains, and then he got polio and lost muscle in one of his legs. So he was lame in one leg. Nevertheless, he was so committed to wanting to climb the mountains that he got himself back up and walking on the trails, which is really remarkable. Nobody really understands how he was able to do that. But I think the drive was just that he was so connected with the wilderness and wanted to be in it. And it wasn't good enough for him to just be sitting in a wheelchair and looking from the valley up at the view.
What do you think it was about the Adirondacks that made such an impact on Weston and inspired so much of the art that he ended up producing?
Well, at that time, there was a lot of talk about transcendental ideals of the connection of spirituality and wilderness and aesthetics. And Weston very much believed in all of those connections. And so he felt that his art and his expression of the wilderness was actually a spiritual endeavor.
So let's talk about the painting that's being auctioned off to benefit the Keene Valley Library. It's called From Gothics. Because this is for radio, I wonder if you could just describe the piece and some of the backstory that you know about it.
Yes, well, this is a honey of a painting. It's just beautiful. And the subject is right smack in the middle of the high peaks. He was actually on the top of Gothics looking toward Haystack and Marcy. So you can't get a more authentic and rugged Adirondack view than that. Because of the shadows in the painting, I read it as dawn light with a setting moon, in which case he either spent the night on top of the mountain, as he sometimes did, or he got a very early start from his camp on the upper Ausable Lake. So it's dramatic with the shadows and the changing light. And you know without a doubt that he was right there. It just feels very immediate. And to that drama, Weston brings a painting technique that he developed while living in France in the 1920s. So in France, he adopted the use of colored paper for watercolors, which he could use to achieve different tonal effects. And that's one of the ways you get that spectacular glow in this painting. So it was dated 1933, and that was the Depression. And the Westons were living an elementary life. One might even say bare bones on the home front, with 2 children at that point and in their rustic cabin and keeping a garden. But you could also say about 1933 that it was a lavish time for his art. I had frequent gallery shows and reviews of his work, which was well known then.
Why was it important for the foundation to donate this piece to be auctioned off to benefit the Keene Public Library?
Well, it all started when the library asked us if it would be okay to use the title from Weston's book, which is Freedom in the Wilds, for their benefit theme this year. And one thing led to another, and we offered to donate the painting to them for auction. They did not ask for it. We offered it. And I know Weston himself would be thrilled. Keene Valley was Weston's creative home, emotional home, and his literal home, full or part-time for his entire life. So it feels right to be able to do this for the library. And I'm confident, whenever we let a painting go, which is not often at all, it's important to us that it go to a good home. And I'm confident that this painting will go to a good home because the winner of this auction will be a hearty supporter of the library.
Weston had a life beyond art, a big life beyond just his art. What would you want folks to know about his humanitarian efforts?
Well, he did not paint in an ivory tower or, in this case, in a cabin in the woods. He did do that, but he was always mindful of the world outside. And he could not resist becoming engaged in rather large movements in the 20th century. So he ended up compelled to join the YMCA during World War I to volunteer. And during World War II, he actually stopped painting and he founded an organization called Food for Freedom, which worked to bring food to victims of the war. And it became the blueprint for the Marshall Plan. And that's not me saying that. That was people like Eleanor Roosevelt who said that. So, there was an artist who was right in the thick of, Washington politics, which was a little amazing. And then in the 50s and 60s, he put a lot of effort into supporting his fellow artists and advocating for the idea that artists should be supported by the government. So that ended up with the National Endowment for the Arts and Humanities legislation that passed in 1965. And he wrote the original version of the mission for that.
You and your mother and your aunt have worked to preserve and promote Harold Weston's legacy. Why has that been so important to you and to your family?
Well, we work to further research and education about Weston's life story, including his humanitarian activism as well as his art. We think very highly of the work and always have. And of course, we are biased, and it just feels important to continue the legacy. It's unfortunate when artists don't have family like that to be able to carry on, because a lot of artists just kind of disappear, and unjustifiably. So we're just keeping the story alive.
That was Harold Weston's granddaughter and biographer, Rebecca Foster, speaking with Emily Russell. Weston's painting, titled From Gothics, is being auctioned off to benefit the Keene Valley Library. The online auction ends Tuesday. That's it for the show. News headlines from NPR return in just a moment. I'm Catherine Wheeler. Be well.